What if one of the most explosive moves in NFL history isn't a blockbuster trade, but a father coaching his own son in a league that tears families apart? This isn't some feel-good football story. This is a power play straight out of a Netflix drama, one that could turn the Cleveland Browns from a struggling franchise into the center of every headline, debate show, and locker room argument across the country. Reports are swirling that the Browns, notorious for their revolving door of quarterbacks and coaches, are making a move so bold it could change the league forever. At the center of it, a fifth-round rookie quarterback, and his dad just happens to be one of the most iconic, controversial, and magnetic figures football has ever seen, Deion Coach Prime Sanders. But this goes deeper than coaching. This is about legacy, loyalty, and what happens when personal ambition collides with professional opportunity on the biggest stage in sports. Here's how it all started, and why this rumored deal, as wild as it sounds, might actually be happening. It started with a name being read at the NFL draft, one that carried far more weight than most fifth-round picks ever could. With the 144th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns select Shadur Sanders, quarterback. One sentence. But it triggered waves across the league. Everyone watching knew exactly what it meant. Not just another rookie coming in to fight for third string, but the son of Deion Sanders stepping into a franchise infamous for destroying quarterbacks. The questions weren't just about his talent. They were about his bloodline, the spotlight, and whether this was the beginning of something much, much bigger. At first, it looked like a quiet move. Another young quarterback tossed into the stack of maybes. Shadur himself didn't say much. No bold guarantees, no over-the-top confidence plays, just went to work, took his reps in silence, and waited. And in Cleveland, of all places, that kind of patience isn't rewarded. But then everything changed overnight. In a tough, grinded-out game, Cleveland's season took another hit, literally. Quarterback Deshaun Watson took a brutal shot to the head midway through the second quarter. It was the kind of hit you feel through the screen. He didn't get up fast. Trainers rushed out, and seconds later, he was headed straight into concussion protocol. No return, no debate. Just like that, the camera panned to the sideline, and Shadur Sanders was putting on his helmet. His first real moment in the NFL wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. It was raw, pressure-packed. And instantly, the stadium, the television audience, and the NFL world turned to see what the kid would do. While chaos unfolded on the field, his father, the man known for diamonds, shades, and sound bites, wasn't even watching live. Deion Sanders was over 1,000 miles away, back in Boulder, Colorado, running a youth football clinic. By all accounts, it was a normal afternoon until his phone buzzed and the news hit him like a punch to the chest. His son was in the game, not warming up, not taking garbage time reps, actually in, against a top AFC contender, with everything on the line. According to people close to him, Deion froze. And then, for maybe the first time in decades, Coach Prime couldn't speak. His older son, Deion Jr., called, screaming into the phone with excitement. But Deion couldn't even squeeze out a word. All the swagger, the media polish, the sound bites, it crumbled. This wasn't a camera moment. This was a father watching from afar as his son stepped into the kind of pressure no rookie truly prepares for. Later, Coach Prime admitted he broke down completely. He said he had to ask for a minute. Couldn't handle the flood of emotion. He was crying hard, so hard, in fact, he struggled to get composed enough to finish the call. And this was no ordinary emotional moment. Years of obsession, sacrifice, coaching, building, demanding excellence. All of it collided in one unstoppable second of truth. Deion's not just a former NFL legend, not just a Hall of Famer. He's been his son's coach since day one. Every game, every throw, every mistake. Every correction, always there. And now, finally, after the cameras, after the critics, after the grind, the moment they both dreamed of was here. And he wasn't even in the building. Shadur, meanwhile, stayed calm, as if he'd been there before, and that's what shocked everyone. This was a fifth-rounder with 0 game reps, now pinned under the spotlight against a Ravens defense known for swallowing young QBs whole. But instead of panicking, he stood tall. His throws weren't flashy. 4 completions. 1 interception. Nothing that would light up ESPN highlights the next morning. But that wasn't the story. The story was his presence, the confidence in the pocket, even when the pocket barely existed. The way he scanned the field. A rookie, sure, but not one rattled by the noise. And maybe that's the most important part. Everyone expected Deion's son to have the tools. What they didn't expect was for him to look this composed just minutes after being thrust onto the field. No warm-up. No easing in, just thrown into the storm, and he didn't flinch. But for the Sanders family, this wasn't just about football. It wasn't about wins or stats, it was deeper. Deion once said he never missed a single one of Shadure's games, not one. He coached him at every level. And hearing his son say, "Dad, I need you," after all these years of being the strongest guy in every room, that hit something deeper than football ever could. That one sentence, "Dad, I need you." That might have been the moment when this storyline, what looked like a random late-round debut, started turning into something far bigger than just a single game. It was never just about joining the NFL. It was about reuniting at the top, about writing the next chapter in a legacy already loaded with pressure. The kind of story that doesn't just unfold on the field, it changes the field altogether. And no one saw what was coming next. Most rookies would have melted. Getting thrown into your first NFL game mid-season, mid-playbook, mid-chaos, with 0 game reps and no chemistry with the starters. That's how careers collapse before they even begin. But Shadur didn't collapse. He didn't rattle. He didn't run. And that fact alone made front offices across the league start watching a little closer. Stat sheets lie. They only tell the part that fans can measure. But players, coaches, they see something else entirely. Shadur completed just 4 passes in that debut. 1 pick, no touchdowns. At first glance, it looks underwhelming, forgettable even. No ESPN replay package, no NFL memes, just a few clean passes, some pressure, some growing pains. But that's not how the professionals saw it. They saw him hit the field without flinching. They saw pocket discipline, strong reads, quick decision-making, all the stuff that doesn't show up on a box score. Shadur kept his feet calm and eyes leveled, even as Baltimore's front 7 crashed through his line like they weren't even there. For a good chunk of that second half, the Browns' offensive unit turned into 5 cones and a prayer. But the rookie still didn't panic. He stayed on plan, ran the plays, took the checkdowns, didn't force the big play just to make an impression. And that small detail, that restraint, is what turned heads. Because that's not what young quarterbacks do in their debut on national television. They're reckless, they're emotional, they try to be the hero. But Shadur, he just played the game. What impressed veteran players most wasn't the arm or the mechanics. It was the posture, the energy, the unspoken confidence. You couldn't teach it, and you sure couldn't fake it. Back in Boulder, Deion watched the final plays unfold with that signature coach prime fire burning just beneath the surface. And when reporters caught him later and asked about how it felt, he didn't brag. He didn't flex. His answer was something else entirely. He said he was proud that Shadur got the opportunity, and that word choice stuck. Not proud of the performance, not proud of being proven right, just proud his son finally got a crack at what he's been working toward his whole life. And then he said something that nobody could ignore. He said Shadur understands what's happening behind the scenes. No one knew exactly what he meant, but it didn't sound casual. It sounded intentional. That wasn't just a proud dad getting emotional. That was a calculated message to the insiders, the front offices, the coaching staff, the fans who think they know what's going on inside that locker room. People started asking, what exactly is happening behind the scenes? That one line changed everything. Was Shadur being underutilized? Was his growth being mishandled? Was the coaching staff not all in on developing him? Or was Deion hinting at something even bigger? A future that's already quietly being planned? Theories exploded. Some claimed Deion had already been meeting with NFL contacts since before the draft. Others said Shadur's slide to the 5th round was part of a larger plan: stay under the radar, land somewhere quiet, then make the move when the timing was perfect. Was that true? Nobody knew. But one thing was certain. At that moment, nobody was treating Shadur like just any rookie anymore. He went from a late-round developmental pick to the focal point of a massive power shift that no one saw coming. You could feel the energy shift inside the Browns organization. The moment Watson went down and Shadur stepped in and held his own, the whispers started. Players started watching film differently. Coaches tightened up. And front office executives, they picked up the phone. Fans only saw a young quarterback throwing 4 completions. But inside that building, eyes were wide open and minds were moving fast. And for Deion, this wasn't new territory. He's built his entire coaching career on flipping pressure into performance. But even he had to admit something was different this time. This wasn't high school. This wasn't Jackson State. This wasn't even Colorado. This was the NFL, real business, real stakes, real careers on the line. And his son just stepped into the fire and didn't burn. Right after the game, Shadur didn't go on a media tour. He didn't post. He didn't talk smack. He didn't try to silence the doubters. He just walked off the field, helmet in hand, calm and unreadable. But cameras caught one moment, one quick interaction that said more than any interview could ever capture. A Browns staffer at the tunnel said something like, "Tough one, man, first taste of the league." And Shadur just smiled. Not forced, not bitter. Just one of those half-curious, half-deadly focused looks that athletes give when they know they've only shown the first 0.01% of what they're capable of. Then he disappeared down the tunnel. And by the following Monday, the rumors about Deion weren't rumors anymore. Suddenly, anonymous sources, real insiders, started leaking something unthinkable. The Cleveland Browns were considering offering Deion Sanders the head coaching position. Full control, total authority. His system, his culture, his players, and at the center of it all, his son as the face of the franchise. A week ago, Shadur Sanders was just a rookie backup on a team in trouble. Now, he might be the cornerstone of a football family takeover that could change the future of the NFL forever. At first, no one believed it. Deion Sanders to the Cleveland Browns? That sounded like something cooked up on social media by bored fans with overactive imaginations. A fun what if, but nothing serious. But as the days passed, something strange happened. The story didn't fade like most rumors do. It didn't disappear under the weight of more pressing headlines. Instead, it quietly grew stronger. Real reporters started asking real questions. League insiders started pulling threads. And people inside the Browns organization, they weren't denying it at all. Instead, everything started pointing in the same direction. Something big was happening behind closed doors in Cleveland, and Deion Sanders was right in the middle of it. The details, at first, sounded exaggerated. Whispers said the Browns weren't just interested in bringing in Coach Prime, they were preparing to make him one of the highest-paid coaches in NFL history. Not just a flashy offer, a transformational one. Word spread that Cleveland was preparing to hand him the kind of control only legendary names like Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, and Sean Payton have ever been given. Not just a seat at the table, total control of the table. And it didn't stop at the salary. The rumored offer included full personnel power, final say on draft picks, staff hires, roster moves, locker room culture, you name it. This wasn't just a coaching hire. This was a top-to-bottom restructuring of the entire franchise, built around Deion's philosophy. And at the core of it all, his son, Shadur. The plan, sources said, was simple but unprecedented. Hand Coach Prime the keys, hand Shadur the starting job, and build a new offense around his strengths from day one. No QB competition. No placeholder veterans. Just a clean slate, a true start, and a chance to evolve with full alignment from coach to quarterback to front office. Something that almost never happens in the NFL. Which raised the question, why now? Why would the Browns, a franchise that historically plays it safe, suddenly roll the dice on an unproven head coach with no NFL experience and a rookie quarterback barely off his first snap? Simple. Desperation. Cleveland has been spinning in circles for years. Veteran quarterbacks, can't-miss prospects, stop-gap coaches, road to nowhere rebuilds. Nothing worked. Every time they think they've found their guy, the same story repeats: injuries, underperformance, locker room tension, a divided fan base. They don't just need a win column boost. They need an identity. They need something that can glue their fans back together and make Sunday feel like a national event, not another chapter in disappointment. And say what you want about Deion Sanders, but when he walks into the room, people watch. He doesn't just change teams, he changes atmospheres. From day one at Jackson State to the college culture explosion at Colorado, Prime's presence turned irrelevant programs into primetime TV. He made recruiting a spectacle. He made press conferences viral. He turned every single game into a moment. That kind of disruption doesn't go unnoticed by billion-dollar franchises looking to sell tickets and win headlines. Still, this wouldn't be a marketing play. That level of money and control, that's not a show. That's an all-in move on a single vision. And the people behind it aren't fans. They're owners, executives, investors. They all know the same thing. A move this bold either hits like lightning or it detonates on impact. But here's what makes this different. This wasn't just about Deion or even Shadur. For the Browns, this was a chance to align every moving piece in one direction for the first time in years. Instead of chasing quarterbacks that don't fit the system or hiring coaches who don't believe in their starters, they could start from scratch with talent, youth, and one of the most disciplined father-son dynamics in football. On top of that, the team wasn't working from scrap parts. Cleveland already had talent, real talent. A top-5 defense led by Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. Playmakers on offense. Cap flexibility. The bones were there. They were just waiting on a heartbeat. And now Deion Sanders might be holding the stethoscope. On paper, it sounds electric, like something out of a screenplay. But it also sounds risky, because it is. Bringing in Coach Prime isn't like hiring from the standard carousel of coordinators and assistant coaches. He doesn't do conventional. He doesn't play politics. He won't smile for owners and nod through front office suggestions. He builds his own machine, and he does it loud, brash, and unapologetically in public. For traditional organizations, that's chaos. For the Browns, that might be exactly what they need. And remember, this isn't coming out of nowhere. The front office has had internal tension for months, staff under pressure, fan support slowly leaking out. The Deshaun Watson saga left emotional scars across the franchise that still haven't fully healed. And year after year, despite talent on the depth chart, they're out of sync. So you can understand why some executives might be ready to roll the dice on a cultural reset, not a partial rebuild, a ground-up transformation. Bring in the guy who gave one of college football's worst teams more national exposure than Alabama. Let him bring his mindset, his grit, his ruthless standards. Let him coach his son with no filters and no excuses, and see what happens when everything runs through one aligned vision. Yeah, it sounds dangerous. But maybe danger is better than inertia. And maybe, just maybe, giving Deion and Shadur complete control of a franchise is either the worst idea the Browns have ever had, or the one thing that finally saves them. By now, the idea didn't sound so wild anymore. It started as a fantasy, Deion Sanders turning the Cleveland Browns upside down, coaching his son, calling every shot like it's a personal empire. But after watching Shadur hold his own, after listening to Coach Prime's cryptic post-game quotes, and after those inside leaks about the Browns considering giving Deion full control, you started to realize something uncomfortable. This might be the most logical move Cleveland's made in years. Because what's the alternative? Let's be honest, for 20 years, the Cleveland Browns have been the NFL's cautionary tale. A franchise with enough talent to try, enough dysfunction to fail, and just enough delusion to believe they can fix it the next time around. But the next time never comes. Just look at the list of quarterbacks since 1999. It doesn't read like a rotation, it reads like a crime scene. Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy, Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, and in between. A never-ending carousel of backups, reclamation projects, overhyped rookies, and desperate patches. Some were serviceable, most were forgettable. A few were straight-up disasters. Each time a new promise. Each time the same result, nothing. The Browns have tried everything. Drafting high, trading big, gambling on talent, shifting playbooks, firing coaches, dozens of resets. Nothing changes. Coaches barely last 2 seasons. Offensive schemes are constantly scrapped. Every new era starts with buzz and ends with maybe next year. And through it all, the fan base has been expected to keep showing up, to keep showing faith in a system that hasn't delivered sustained hope since before smartphones existed. The Watson trade was supposed to be the end of that drought. 3 first-round picks, massive contract, massive gamble, and in return, scandal, injury, inconsistency, and a locker room kept on life support. It's not just that the Browns lose, it's that they do it in slow motion. Coaches cracking under pressure, players defending chaos at press conferences, reporters asking the same burned-out questions, again and again and again. That's where this Deion Sanders talk hit different, because love him or hate him, he doesn't do average. He doesn't do wait and see. He walks into the room like a verdict. You feel it. And the Browns, they need that energy like oxygen. Forget your traditional list of safe hires, the up-and-coming coordinator or the recycled ex-head coach. That playbook has already failed them, for decades. Maybe it's time to write something no one's ever seen before. The moment Deion enters the building, everything changes. Every press conference becomes a national story. Every training camp becomes a documentary. Every game, win or lose, gets top billing. The Browns overpower irrelevance not by winning it back slowly, but by force. They don't just attract headlines, they become the headline. And fans, they crave it. Not fake hype, not false hope, reasons, something to believe in, something with gravity. Deion brings that. He speaks with conviction so sharp it sounds like fate. He makes players believe they're warriors. He makes recruits feel like kings. He makes losing feel unnatural, and that's something Cleveland hasn't felt in a long time because the Browns don't just lack talent, they lack identity. Back in the day, teams were scared to play in Cleveland. There was edge, there was electricity, wins were earned there. Now, teams circle the Browns on the schedule as a get-right game. What Deion offers isn't just a new playbook. It's a complete energy shift. Players change how they approach practice. Coaches become accountable. Competing means more than lining up, it means showing up for real. He doesn't tolerate laziness. He doesn't sugarcoat problems. He doesn't smile through mediocrity. And if a player can't handle the pressure, they're out, period. That ruthless clarity is what Cleveland has been missing. And then there's Shadur. He's the reset button no one expected. Young, composed, unshaken by pressure, built for the modern game, but also carrying something deeper: legacy. He knows what the name Sanders means. He knows some fans think he's just getting handed this opportunity. And he's perfectly fine proving them wrong, silently, ruthlessly, just like his dad taught him. That's why this isn't just about a coaching hire. This is about culture alignment, the one thing you never get in the NFL. Usually, teams are divided. The GM drafts one kind of QB, the coach runs another kind of system, and the fan base roots through gritted teeth hoping something sticks. This is different. Same voice, same system, same vision from the GM's office down to the huddle. That's not a risk. That's a blueprint. That's how dynasties start. Of course, there's still doubt. Deion has never coached in the NFL. Shadur's only played a handful of snaps. The media backlash would be immediate. Every decision would be dissected. Every loss would become headline ammo. Every moment between father and son would be viewed not as coaching, but favoritism. But maybe that kind of pressure, for once, is exactly what Cleveland needs. Because what's more dangerous for a broken franchise, bold disruption or quiet decline? Deion Sanders doesn't come with a soft launch. If he does take over this team, the NFL won't get time to adjust. And maybe that's the point. The Browns have adjusted for everybody else for decades. Maybe now it's time to make the league adjust to them. To the casual audience, Deion Sanders is all flash. Chains, sunglasses, catchphrases, social media dominance. The guy who made sidelines feel like music videos and turned press conferences into showtime. But that's only surface level. Behind the spotlight is someone far more dangerous, someone who's turned a lifetime of pressure into a personal playbook for control, focus, and transformation. Because what most people miss is that Deion doesn't just look like a head coach. He acts like one. And he's already proven he can lead teams, establish culture, and produce results in hostile, high-pressure environments while mentoring players, including his own son, without showing even a flicker of favoritism. Coach Prime isn't a gimmick. He's a system. From the beginning, he's made one rule crystal clear. Family status doesn't buy forgiveness. Legacy doesn't buy leniency. And carrying the Sanders name doesn't earn you special treatment, it earns you more pressure, not less. At Colorado, Shadur learned that instantly. Behind the media clips and post-game swagger was a weekly grind that left nothing untouched. Deion didn't shield his son from blame. He didn't coddle him from criticism. He graded him like everyone else. Sometimes harder. Coaches around the team said Shadur got coached more harshly precisely because he was Deion's kid. It wasn't about playing the role of dad. It was about preparing a man for war. The way Deion explained it is simple but genius. Before games, during warm-ups, he's dad. He walks the sideline. He talks to Shadur with gentle calm, just a father giving his son reassurance. I got you, let's go, you belong here. But when kickoff hits, the switch flips. Gone is the father. On comes the coach. And not just any coach, but a demand every inch, hold nothing back, results-driven alpha who doesn't blink twice at benching players, calling out missed assignments, or forcing accountability in front of the whole team. That's not easy to manage, especially when your own flesh and blood is in the huddle. But Deion has mastered it. Not through tricks, but through trust. Because when players see that even his son can't skip the grind, they fall in line behind him. That's what makes Deion different. He doesn't rule through fear. He rules through standards. And it's those standards, not the flash, that have turned his programs into must-watch football. The outside world fixates on the quotes. But behind the scenes, it's structure, repetition, and no-nonsense discipline that run the show. What critics miss is that Deion isn't trying to entertain. He's trying to shift the mentality of every player who walks into his orbit. The sunglasses, the confidence, it's personal slogans, those are psychological armor, not arrogance. Mindset tools deployed to help college kids abandon doubt and start thinking like killers. And Shadur bought into it completely. not because he's Deion son, but because he believed in the pressure. He believed that walking into every game with the entire country waiting for him to fail wasn't a punishment, it was a proving ground. The explosion of hate Shadur got last season would have cracked many quarterbacks. The social media trolls, the disrespectful headlines, accusations about being entitled, whisper campaigns about nepotism, fans questioning if he'd ever earned his spot. Through it all, he barely said a word. Instead, he got hit harder than almost any quarterback in college football. He got sacked over 50 times. He had no protection, no elite offensive line, but no complaints, no blame, no quitting. He showed up every week with the same quiet focus. That's what Deion really values, not just stats, not just mechanics, but the durability of character, the ability to walk through fire and stay disciplined. So when he says things like, Shadur is different, or they're trying to turn him into something he's not talking as a father defending his kid. He's talking like a general defending his quarterback. And people forget, Deion Sanders has decades of professional football insight. He's not a YouTuber turned coach. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion, a Hall of Famer, a man who built his reputation not just on highlights, but on preparation. He knows what NFL level looks like. He's lived with NFL level talent. And when he looks at Shadur, he doesn't just see potential. He sees a player with psychological armor that most NFL veterans still don't have. That's why coaching his son at the NFL level doesn't scare him, it drives him. Because the way he sees it, Shadur is more prepared than the league will ever admit. For pressure, for scrutiny, for the weight of expectation that would crush most rookies. What makes this dynamic so powerful is that they've both already practiced what everyone else is afraid of: total accountability, public pressure, a nation waiting for them to screw it up. And still, they function. They don't avoid the expectations, they embrace them. That's why the vision of Deion Sanders coaching Shadur in the NFL doesn't sound like a fairy tale anymore. It sounds like part 2 of a formula they've already tested in fire. And it's working. Doubt has followed Shadur Sanders like a shadow. From the moment his name entered the college football world, people have been waiting for him to fail. Not because of his skills, not because of his stats, but because of his last name. In the world of football, there's nothing fans distrust more than privilege. Anyone seen as handed an opportunity born into access instantly gets hit with skepticism. And for Shadur, that hate came early and hard. He wasn't just a scholarship athlete, he was Coach Prime's kid. The quarterback who never had to earn it, the one playing for his dad, the one who got cameras and coverage while others had to fight for a sentence in a scouting report. So no matter how well he played, people didn't want to give him credit. They said the numbers were inflated. They said the defenses were weak. They blamed the system, the hype, his lineage, anything to avoid admitting that maybe, just maybe, he was actually built for this. But facts don't care about narratives. And Shadur's numbers, brutalized O-line or not, they speak louder than any of the critics ever could. Last season at Colorado, behind quite literally one of the worst offensive lines in college football, Shadur still threw for over 3,000 yards, maintained one of the lowest interception rates in the country, and still showed up every week with laser-like mechanics, quick reads, and NFL-caliber pocket presence. He didn't just put up stats. He played smart, efficient football in a system not built to protect him. Week after week, he got planted into the turf. There were clips of him getting hit so hard, it looked like scenes from a documentary about quarterback survival. Most QBs would have been out by midseason. Instead, he kept getting up, adjusting, delivering. That's what Deion Sanders means when he says Shadur isn't trying to be turned into someone else. Because people keep trying to fit him into a box he doesn't belong in. They want him to be flashy, arrogant, reckless. He's none of that. He's precise. He's patient. He plays like a 10-year vet, not a college kid trying to prove something. And that maturity gets ignored by people too busy searching for the narrative they want, instead of reporting the truth that's in front of them. But Coach Prime is done staying quiet about it. He's been clapping back subtly, but powerfully. Instead of just defending his son emotionally, he started calling out the scouting world directly. He said outright, Quinn Ewers won't go before Shadur. He went even further, adding, Carson Beck's not going ahead of him either. These aren't harmless quotes. In a world where draft rankings are protected by ego, calling out projected first-rounders like that is personal. And the scary part? He wasn't just talking as a father. He was talking like a seasoned talent evaluator. Because Deion Sanders, beyond the persona, has watched top-tier football long enough to break down QB mechanics better than half the talking heads on TV. He's watched every throw, every read, every late gameplay decision, and he's come to a calculated conclusion. Shadur isn't just draftable, he belongs at the top, and what drives him even more isn't praise but disrespect. Critics keep trying to catch Shadur in a moment of arrogance. They don't get one. They try to rattle him in press conferences. He responds with quiet confidence. Then they say that shows cockiness. He can't win unless he wins, period. And that's what fuels both father and son. They're not chasing headlines, they're chasing legacy, because the end goal here was never just a good season. It was never to prove he belongs as some project QB. This was always a long-term mission, one that started when Shadur was still a teenager working in silence, and now leads straight into the NFL with a chip so large it's cracking opinions in half. Shadur hasn't just dealt with pressure, he's thrived inside it. He's the only quarterback in his draft class who played every game with the weight of an entire media landscape, watching his every throw, hunting for flaws. He's the only one whose every decision sparked a debate. And still, he outperformed the noise. So when Deion Sanders speaks on his son, it's not just a proud dad hyping the kid, it's a man who's been inside locker rooms with future Hall of Famers and still believes Shadur has the mental makeup and technical discipline to lead at the next level. And maybe that's what people fear most. Because when you strip away the noise, the name, the spotlight, the debate, all you're left with is a quarterback who's processing defenses faster, reading the field cleaner, and surviving physical punishment better than most seasoned pros. And if you're an NFL exec who bet on someone else, someone with more conventional hype, that realization stings. Because you realize the spotlight didn't create Shadur Sanders. It couldn't change him if it tried. And now the very media that said he was a product of privilege is starting to realize something else. He might be the most mentally ready quarterback in the league. So they're shifting, backtracking on old narratives, saying things like, we might have underestimated him. Saying, well, he improved. But the truth is, he didn't change. He just stayed visible long enough for the world to stop lying to itself. This isn't a kid riding on his father's name. It's a quarterback who's always been better than the system allowed him to be. And now, he might be the epicenter of the biggest cultural shift the NFL has seen in years. If this happens, if Deion Sanders actually takes the Cleveland Browns job, what follows won't be football. It'll be war. Not with teams, not with rival coaches or front offices, but with attention, with pressure, with perception. Because hiring a coach to develop his own son as the face of an NFL franchise, that's not just bold, that's explosive. It's the perfect cocktail of legacy, ego, risk, and narrative, shaken until the lid blows off. And the moment it's announced, everything changes. Not just for Shadur, not just for Deion, but for every single person in that locker room. Think about it, the first interception Shadur throws, there'll be debate shows questioning why he's even starting. The first losing streak, articles will say this was inevitable. Coach Prime chose family over football. Every press conference becomes a battleground. Every sideline moment between father and son will be slowed down, zoomed in, and dissected frame by frame. One eye roll will become a headline. The NFL is brutal like that. Even the most experienced head coaches get buried under public pressure and fan noise. Imagine what happens when it's your son throwing the ball and your philosophical approach being second-guessed in real time. Every pass, every sack, every timeout called or not called, suddenly it's not just a football decision. It's a family dynamic. The term nepotism will be on every sports site, every clip, constantly. It won't matter how composed Shadur is or how experienced Deion becomes. That fire will never stop burning. It'll just shift depending on how they're winning or not. And that's exactly why this scenario scares NFL executives, not because they don't believe Shadur can play. Not because they don't think Deion can coach, but because if it doesn't work, it doesn't just fail quietly. It becomes a cultural collapse played out in public. It becomes the cautionary tale every franchise avoids for the next decade. Nobody wants to be the team that handed the keys to a family. Nobody wants to be remembered for the one move that blew up the whole room. So yeah, it's risky, wildly risky. The kind of gamble that makes or breaks legacies. But you know who's good with that? Deion Sanders. Pressure doesn't scare him. In fact, he invites it. He once said he doesn't feel pressure, only opportunity. That might sound like a soundbite, but everything about Deion's career has followed that philosophy. This is the guy who played 2 pro sports at the highest level, who dominated at cornerback in an era filled with mega receivers, who beat the media at their own game before social media even existed, who turned a forgotten college program into a national sensation in less than a season. Every bet he's placed on himself? Loud, wild, unconventional, and successful. There's a reason he's built like a brand, not off marketing, but off results. Still, coaching in the NFL is a different beast. It's not about recruiting. It's not about speeches and swagger. It's about managing a locker room of millionaires, balancing egos, coordinating with GMs, handling contracts, game planning at a tactical military level, while blocking out the noise. College players look up to Deion. NFL veterans, they'll challenge him. That's what makes this move dangerous. You don't win games in the NFL on charisma. You win on execution. You win on relationships built behind closed doors. You win in the film room, not on Instagram. But again, Deion knows that. And if he takes this job, it isn't for the clout. It's for the challenge. Because there's one thing left he hasn't done: build something in the NFL as a leader. Not just play, build. What better way to do it than by taking the most dysfunctional franchise of the modern era and turning it into a dynasty with his son at the center? That's not just a story. That's history. And he knows it. And as for Shadur, the narrative that he might collapse under pressure is cute until you actually look at him. This is a quarterback who's been under national fire before taking a real NFL snap, who was mocked, doubted, labeled as Deion's kid before anyone talked about his throwing motion or QBR, and yet still composed, still focused, still showing up to camp knowing that every single mistake he makes will be blamed not on his inexperience, but on his last name, still taking hits, still learning quietly, still moving forward. That's not the kind of mental toughness you coach. That's built over decades of being told you're only here because your dad handed it to you and responding with performance instead of answers. That's why this move might work, because for all the chaos it invites, they've already been living in it. Deion and Shadur have never had the luxury of peace. They've already been under an NFL microscope without even officially living inside it. So when people say, what happens if everything falls apart under the spotlight? The answer's easy. They've been under the spotlight for years. And they're still rising. Strip away the emotion. Take out the cameras, the clickbait, the tweets, and the viral theories. Set aside the father coaching his son, drama, the media frenzy, the legacy talk, the pressure-loaded headlines. Just look at the football. And things start to make a lot more sense. Because for all the chaos Cleveland's been through, off-the-field scandals, quarterback heartbreak, coaching turnover, there's one thing you can't deny: the Cleveland Browns don't need to be built from scratch. The foundation is already there. Quietly, patiently, desperately waiting for leadership that makes it all click. Start with the defense. Right now, Cleveland has one of the most dangerous defensive rosters in the league. Not potentially great, already great. Myles Garrett is a game wrecker. One of the few defensive players who can take over a game completely by himself. Double teams don't stop him. Triple teams barely slow him down. He's not just elite, he's a franchise cornerstone. And he's not alone. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, young, fast, physical defenders who bring speed and attitude to every snap. Top 5 in most key categories last season. They don't need fixing. They need direction. That's the kind of unit you can win with. Not next year, now, then look at the offense. It's not as empty as people think. The offensive line, healthy, it's above average. Anchored by Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, this is a group that knows how to move bodies when the scheme is right. It's not a rebuild, it's a real weapon that just hasn't been used properly. And the playmakers, there's juice there. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, running backs with burst, receivers with big play potential. This team isn't completely missing talent. It's missing continuity, missing a voice that brings every piece into sync. That's where Deion Sanders and Shadur could finally flip the switch. Because unlike first-time coaches who walk into broken rosters and need 3 years to clean house, Coach Prime would be stepping into a locker room ready to compete. All they're missing is structure, energy, identity, and a quarterback whose system is designed to elevate him, not ask him to carry everything on day one. You give Shadur a clean system. Rhythm throws, play action game, RPO flexibility, checkdowns built into vertical reads, he'll thrive. His game isn't about running wild or playing hero ball. It's about timing, accuracy, patience under pressure, and surgical execution. These aren't traits you install, they're traits you're born with or not. And Shadur's already shown he has them. With Deion overseeing the entire operation, the offense would finally have one voice at the top. One mindset guiding personnel. No divided strategy between GM, coordinator, and head coach. Just one streamlined system built from the inside out. That's what NFL franchises try to create by accident. Cleveland has a chance to do it intentionally. You think it's never worked before? Look around the league. When Kyle Shanahan joined San Francisco, he demanded full control of the offense and brought in a style that aligned with his philosophy. Result: Super Bowl appearances and one of the most consistent offensive machines in football. Sean McVay did the same with the Rams. His system, his quarterback, his culture, no outside interference. The blueprint is there. And Deion's system, while new to the NFL, is already proven on lower levels. He runs a modern, discipline-first model. Up-tempo, detail-obsessed, built around trust and player belief. Combine that with an athletic, accurate quarterback comfortable making decisions and reading full-field progressions, that's danger. Remember, Deion isn't coming into the league lost. He's studied personnel, watched film with NFL scouts, sat in on meetings. He knows how this game works. He knows this is chess. And he's not stepping into the NFL just to be flashy. He's stepping in to prove it translates. This wouldn't be a celebrity hire, it would be a system shift. And then there's the money. Deion's name alone draws attention. Ticket sales, sponsorships, primetime slots, jersey revenue. In one season, he would triple the spotlight on Cleveland. National coverage every week, endless media heat. For a city starved of football relevance, that attention isn't just fun, it's fuel. It renews interest, reignites purpose. And don't ignore the younger generation. Players under 25 already see Deion as elite. To them, he's not just a Hall of Famer, he's digital royalty. A larger-than-life motivator who speaks their language. And that kind of cultural alignment, you can't fake it. It creates locker room buy-in from day one. And most importantly, this wouldn't be a rebuild stretched over years in the dark. With the right staff and pieces in place, this is a 9-win team overnight. Maybe more. They wouldn't be playing for hope. They'd be playing to shock the league. All they'd need is chemistry. And when the quarterback believes in the coach, when the coach believes in the quarterback. And when both believe in shutting the outside world out completely, that's when something special happens. And maybe, just maybe, Cleveland's been waiting for that kind of belief all along. So now we're here. One of the most dysfunctional teams in NFL history, staring down a move so bold, so dangerous, so unprecedented, it might actually work. Think about what we're really saying here. The Cleveland Browns, long dismissed as a graveyard for quarterbacks and a factory of disappointment, are seriously considering handing full control to a man with zero NFL coaching experience. To lead his own son, as the face of a franchise desperate for identity, for wins, and for a reason to believe again. It sounds insane. And maybe it is. But what's crazier? Letting history repeat itself for the 30th time. Or finally burning the blueprint that's failed you for decades and letting a completely new system in through the front door. This isn't just about football anymore. It's about vision. It's about breaking every unspoken rule that's kept franchises stuck in neutral. And doing something no one has dared to try at this level. Turning family into foundation, legacy into leadership, and pressure into purpose. Because if the Browns go through with this, they're not just hiring a coach. They're not just starting a rookie quarterback. They're rewriting how the league thinks about culture, coaching, character, and control. And it's exactly the kind of chaos the NFL can't ignore. The league has always thrived off drama. Rivalries, storylines, personalities. Deion Sanders is all for, but now he's not pitching hype. He's pitching structure, command. A new kind of leadership born out of exacting standards and impossible scrutiny, the kind of environment only someone who's lived in the fire could bring with him. And Shadur, he's not just some kid trying to prove he belongs. He's the product of a lifetime of pressure, and he's not folding. He's not trying to be the next anything. Not Mahomes, not Lamar, not Burrow. He's trying to be the first Shadur Sanders. Calm, calculated, unfazed, and built from bloodlines that have always thrived under light most people run from. So now the league is watching, wondering if this move is madness or genius in disguise. Because let's be real, the safe thing for Cleveland to do? Hire another coordinator. Play another mid-tier veteran quarterback while they develop the future. Keep babysitting dysfunction and painting on progress. But at some point, don't you have to ask, how much time can you waste chasing safe? Deion's not walking into this with softness. He'll expect accountability from pros. He'll cut players he coached in college if they break the standard. He's not building a father-son fantasy camp. He's trying to shift the psychology of a losing culture. And if he pulls it off, Every struggling franchise, every overcautious front office, suddenly has to reevaluate everything. And that's what really scares people. Because if this works, if the Browns actually hand Deion Sanders full reins, if Shadur steps in and leads with poise and precision, if they form one unit built from purpose instead of politics, then what excuse do the other teams have? Why can't other teams align vision from the top down? Why can't culture matter more than convention? Why can't belief be built, even from risk? That's the question this entire story leaves behind, because we don't know how it ends yet, but we know what it means. This moment isn't just about a coaching rumor. It's about two people, tied by blood, walking toward the most pressure-packed opportunity in football and saying, "We want it." Not running, not dodging, leaning in. And maybe that's exactly what it takes to turn a beaten-down franchise into something more than a logo and a list of what-ifs. So now it's your turn to think it over. Would you make the move? Would you hand Deion Sanders full organizational control and let him build around his son? Is this the spark Cleveland's needed for 20 years, or is it the move that sends them crashing all over again? Let us know in the comments. Masterstroke or disaster? Either way, if this story plays out the way it's heading, the NFL will never be the same again.